Hey everyone, it is the Enforcer, and today I'm going to bring you the Day 32 news. Unfortunately, I didn't update the title on this map. It's been a very busy day today with everything that's happened, but we're about to get into that in a minute. First off, I'd like to recognize that tonight we have a fundraiser going on for UNICEF. UNICEF is a very good organization. I don't really know about the political stuff. I saw some stuff about that in the chat. I don't know about that. All I know is that they give 88.9% of their profits to the actual causes they support. They help out with famines and thirst around the world, making sure that people do not die of those two basic things, considering that food, water, and shelter are the basic requirements for human life. It appears that they are reaching those minimum requirements, and while we've looked at helping out the Red Cross and Doctors Without Borders that help out people who've been injured, we haven't focused on a fundraiser on this channel yet that primarily revolves around just making sure that people can survive in the first place. And so that's why I picked UNICEF tonight, and I hope we can get a lot of support for them and donations, because they are currently active inside of Ukraine, and they are helping out Ukrainians that are in dire situations. So let's please give them as much support as possible. And now I'm going to go into a little bit of news before we actually get to the real news as to what has happened on this channel. It appears that our Discord server was attacked by some kind of Russian bots. Not really sure the exact details as of now, but it seems that one of our moderators was some kind of plant, and so they decided to finally spring into action today and began an attack, banning members of our Discord and just wreaking all hell and havoc on it. Fortunately, the ones who got banned didn't see the chaos unfold, but I was sitting around here for about 20 minutes trying to figure out how to fix that and clamp it down. So currently, if you're still on the Discord, it's on lockdown. We're probably going to shut that one down and make a whole new Discord, just so that way we can get rid of the filth that currently has been put onto it, because there's like 1,000 new members and all of them are bots. So we're trying to look into how to fix that situation at the moment. So everyone just hang tight. It's been an exhausting day for me, so I'm sorry about that, everyone. But please bear with me, and we're going to try and come up with a fix to that. So hopefully everything else goes perfectly fine. There's not too many problems with it. Considering everything that's happened, we're going to be looking into some fundamental changes in how the server operates from now on, considering that things have been overlooked, like what happened today, and we're just going to have to make sure that we're more vigilant in that regard. So, to go over the schedule for today, we're going to cover the Northern Front, and then we're going to move on to the Eastern Front without taking questions. Once more, it seems like a lot of people like that format, and a lot of people do like to just get the news outright, so we're going to continue on with the new format that we've taken on, where we'll do no questions until the end. We'll then cover the Eastern Front news. Most of our news today, unfortunately, was location unknowns, so we don't really have a lot of news, and we can't really say exactly where it happened. But we'll actually have a lot of news, we just don't have a lot of news with precise locations. We'll then cover the rest of the Eastern Front, move on to the Southern Front. We'll include Dnipro and the Southern Front today. We'll then move on to the international news, because we've gotten a couple of international news tidbits today. And then we'll finally move on to everyone's questions. So, without further ado, let's get to the news. And I'm sorry if tonight I'm not really carrying the same energy. I've been working nonstop today on everything, and so I'm worn out. And also, just to let you all know, I forgot this important bit of news. There will not be a stream tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm actually going to be taking the day off tomorrow. It's going to be the first time I've taken the day off in 32 days. I've been doing this nonstop, working about 56 hours a week. It's like 7 to 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, so about 60 hours a week nonstop for 4 weeks now and a couple of days. And so I'm just kind of wanting to make sure I can kind of recharge and keep at this, and just keep doing that. So for everyone to know, we're currently working on a fix to the Discord server, and I will not be streaming tomorrow. So just for everyone to know that before we go into the news, and now that we've gotten that covered, we're going to get into it. First off, it appears that the pocket that we've heard about in the Bucha hostile Irpin area appears to have been surrounded, and it now seems that the Ukrainian special forces are fighting in the area. I'm going to show you all the video to show that that is the case.
Друзі, доброго дня! Ще зранку тут була жива русня. Зараз ми просто виконали свою місію, нашу роботу. Наша робота – це вбивати русню. Кожну русню, яка ступила своєю ногою на нашу священну землю. Все буде Україна.
Okay, so I do have to say this. While I am pro-Ukrainian, I have noticed now over the course of 3 days, there have been several different people in many different videos, all standing in the same spot. Because, and I'll tell y'all why I'm thinking this, okay? Here's a destroyed T-72 with the external fuel tanks on the back. Burned out. And then when the camera pans over, there's a burned out BMP-2 here. And we've seen these two exact same destroyed vehicles in about 3 different films and from this area. And so I guess they're using this as like a photo shoot press conference kind of area. But at the same time, I don't want anyone to be under the misconception that I'm not paying attention to this. This does appear that is the same location that's been in 3 different videos with 3 different people, including the American Foreign Legion volunteers. So I was just wanting to point that out, just to make that clear to everyone. But nonetheless, the video will continue. Not much was left to it. But it's good to know that the special forces are operating in the area. Hopefully they can close off that... Well, they've already closed off the pocket. Hopefully they can put enough pressure on it where the Russian forces inside of it will surrender. We're now going to move on to the next bit where we can see more pictures of the Ukrainian special forces in Irpin. These were taken by Vice News just a little while ago, just a few hours ago it seems. But we can see here that some pretty interesting pictures. It appears that they're just on the highway. I'm not exactly sure the details behind this story as to why they're there, but I do like the blue jeans. The blue jeans are a nice little touch. So we're now going to move on to the news inside of Kyiv, and while this isn't human loss, I do feel that it is very unfortunate. I have dogs, and I have a very soft spot for dogs in general. I love them to bits, and what y'all are about to see here made me feel incredibly sad, and so I was wanting to show it to y'all. So a little dog was hurt. It was like a little puppy, and it got shrapnel on its leg or something, but I felt really bad for it, and I was like, man, that sucks. I really don't have much more to say about it, rather than I just hate that, and hopefully that tugs at y'all's heartstrings as much as mine, because I really hated seeing that. And that's actually all the news we got out of Kyiv today, was that a dog was injured. So if, you know, although that's an unfortunate thing, it's not as bad as people dying. And so if there were no civilian casualties incurred inside of Kyiv today, and the dog just got a little hurt, then, you know, really honestly, it was a very good day compared to what we've been seeing for weeks on end in Kyiv. Strike after strike, rocket attack after rocket attack. And now, today we haven't heard of any civilian casualties, although I'm not sure if that is entirely representative of the case, considering that we're only going off of video evidence, and all we can see is that a dog got injured. So I'm very sorry for the dog, and I hope it does well. But if no civilian casualties were incurred today, then today was a great day in the area of Kyiv. We're now going to move on to the Chernobyl area, where we'll see a little bit of news. It appears that the Russians have been bombarding Chernobyl a bit, or this damage has just been around for quite some time. But anyways, we've got a video of the damage inside of the city. This actually looks like a pretty new apartment building. It's very unfortunate stuff, and I hate to see it. And considering that these people are being displaced, and, you know, I'm going to circle this back to the fundraiser tonight, considering that these poor people have been displaced, and we don't really know how would you say it? How well off they are. You know, we don't know if they've made it out of the country or not, if these people have become refugees here. And so the thing to me is that, are they even getting food and water? And that's kind of what the fundraiser is about tonight. Again, is trying to get an organization a little bit of extra funding that's over there currently providing food and water to Ukrainians in precarious situations. So if y'all would like, please make sure to donate to the fundraiser as much as possible. And also a clarification, because I've seen this circling around a little bit. I don't make anything off of the fundraisers. I do them because I support Ukraine and I support the cause. So if you're hearing rumors, or if someone's trying to spread that around the chat and you see that for a second, that's not the case. How the YouTube fundraiser system works, and I'll explain it real quick so that way everyone knows. This is called the YouTube Give function on my channel. And when I use it, I can go through and click create fundraiser, type in what fundraiser I want, the goal, the amount of time that this fundraiser will go, be existent, and then at the end of that, I can sit there and mark like the days and the times and stuff. And then once I do that, that's over. When you donate the money to the fundraiser, that money goes straight from y'all to YouTube. It doesn't touch me at all, and I don't get to see any of it. It goes straight to YouTube. They handle all the fees on that money, and then after they do all that stuff, they send it off to the organization that the fundraiser was intended for. They send it off to that EIN number, because all of the fundraiser's money is earmarked for that EIN, which is the charitable organization that we've picked, which is UNICEF tonight. So I'm just wanting everyone to know that, because that's something that some people have been saying, and it's just nonsense, and it's just trying to smear the channel, and maybe Russian bots trying to interfere with how well the fundraisers do. But nonetheless, we've run out of news in the Northern Front today. There actually wasn't much that happened, and once again, I believe that this is showing and suggesting that the Russians have largely stalled in this area. We haven't heard any news about the Ukrainians pushing the Russians farther back either, so I'm not really sure if anything's happening here, or if it just became a static front. But nonetheless, we do know that the pocket is being closed here in the Bucha, Hostomel, Irpin area, and we also know that a dog was injured in Kyiv. So not much happened today in the Northern Front, thankfully. So we're now going to move on to the Eastern Front, where we're going to talk about all the location unknowns we've got today, and we have a load. So the first one we saw was a Stugna P hit a Russian tank. We've seen Stugnas all over the place, and I hate to get repetitive, but I do love to show this because we do know that the Russians are apparently, from what we can tell, watching this channel because they pretty much copied my map. If you're new to the stream, welcome, by the way, but they pretty much copied the map verbatim, which was interesting to me. But anyways, I'm going to show you all the video.
Блядь, красава, сука, умничка. Хорош, блядь!
So you can see they knocked out another tank. The crew that was operating the Stugna seemed pretty happy about it, and I'm pretty happy for them too. It's good to know that they're defending their country, and the Russians aren't getting a lick of ground, and now they're actually losing a decent bit of it. So always good to see. And now we're going to move on to the next video, where we can actually see that the South Ossetians that came from Georgia, and I'll show you where that is, because a lot of people are probably like, where's South Ossetia? So this is the country of Georgia, and while on most maps it's shaped like this, actually there's two unofficial countries inside of the borders of Georgia. There's this little one here that has this dotted line around it. This country is called South Ossetia, and this one up here that has this little dotted line that divides this into kind of like a peninsula is called something like West Abkhazan or something like that. I don't really know the exact name of this one, but both of these countries were founded, these fake countries, like proxy countries, were founded after the Russian invasion in 2009, where the Russians pretty much won the Georgian War because they invaded Georgia, and in the peace treaty, they made these two unofficial countries, and one of them was called South Ossetia. And about a week ago, we saw South Ossetian forces rolling out of the country, their little small country, into Russia and probably heading towards Ukraine. And so today we actually got proof of that, as in this video we can actually see the South Ossetian forces in Ukraine in the middle of fighting. So here's that video. Alright, so we're now going to move on to the next video, where we can see a Ukrainian helicopter in action, and it appears, now I'm not an expert on helicopter cockpits or anything, I'm not really sure if it's this video either, but one of the two videos that I've got to show tonight of Ukrainian helicopters in action appears to be some kind of Black Hawk, which is interesting to me. But anyways, I'm going to let y'all see the video. Now, I don't think this is the one in particular I'm thinking about. So we can see it looks like they're taking some pretty hard turns. Now, I'm not exactly sure what kind of helicopter this is. I can't really tell you all that, but it is flying incredibly low. Oh, it must be an Mi-8. Yeah, you can tell from the cockpit, like, I guess the cockpit windshield, if you want to call it that. It looks like an Mi-8, so I'm assuming this is probably an Mi-8. If any helicopter would have a cockpit, it would look like that. Sorry if I'm kind of a little tired and worn out. I kind of am. So we're going to move on to the next bit of news, where we can see another video of a helicopter in action, and I believe this is the one. No, this is actually an Mi-8 as well. You can also see that this one's flying incredibly low, but it is a different bit of footage because the time of day is different, so I'm not sure if it's from the same helicopter at a different time, but we do know that it is another video of a Ukrainian helicopter in action. I'm not entirely sure. Honestly, I'm not really sure if this is the same video with a filter put on it. No, it's not. It's really interesting to see how it operates because this guy, while he's the co-pilot, it kind of seems like it's a pretty relaxed affair, at least as far as it's concerned for him. Very interesting stuff, but nonetheless, we're now going to move on to the next bit of news where we can see the Russians attacking a road. So I'll show you all that real quick. Not exactly sure what units were down there. The footage was kind of choppy, but nonetheless, you could tell pretty well that whatever they were attacking, it looks like it was getting pretty close to whatever it was, considering that it looked like it was on the road. So we're now going to move to the next bit of news where we can see Ukrainian peon. I'm not really sure how it's pronounced, and I'm sure a lot of people will tell me in the comments, but we can see that one of these was destroyed by the Russians today. It appears that these have been getting a little bit of a tough time because we saw one of these captured the other day, then we saw another one destroyed, and now this is the third one on video that we've seen where a Ukrainian peon has been destroyed. So I'm going to let you all see the video. And so as you can see there, unfortunately, the peon was destroyed. I really hate that that happened. But once again, the Ukrainians are making great strides across most of the country. And we'll talk about the tactical situation later. The strategic situation is a better description of the term later, and talk about how it's really going for the Russians and why they really can't fix the situation and how it's going at the moment. We're now going to move on to the next bit of news where we can see some Ukrainian Marines ambush Russians on another road. A lot of modern action in the military occurs on roadways. In fact, really all military action throughout most of history occurred on or near a roadway, and we can see that that's the case here as well. So I'm going to let y'all see the video. As you can see, one of the vehicles got destroyed outright. And now we can see the aftermath and the damage of it. It appears that there are multiple vehicles that we didn't see in the video that got wiped out. It looks like 2 of them are still burning. Hopefully this hinders Russian efforts in the area wherever this happened, although we, of course, is a location unknown, so we don't have any specific information as to where this was, but we can tell that there was at least 2 T-72Bs. Not really sure if they were B-3s or just Bs. And then it also appears on the road. Let me go back and take a look at that real quick. Ah, man, hang on. Let me go back a little bit further. That looks like maybe a BMP. Another T-72. So there's 3 T-72s at least, and maybe 2 BMPs, because I really can't tell what this one is. It's kind of in the tree line. But anyways, we're going to skip forward in the video, let y'all see the end of it. And so, there we have it. Fortunately, the Ukrainians are pushing the Russians back still. We don't know if that was the Russians trying to launch some kind of offensive and they got destroyed, or if it was the Russians trying to retreat or just reposition and they got destroyed. Not entirely sure about any of the information about that. But we're now going to move on to the next bit of news, where we can see a Stugna attack on Russian units. Of course, the Stugna has started to become the preferred weapon of choice for the Ukrainians, and it does appear to have some advantages over the Javelin. For example, a Stugna can be used completely behind cover, because the Stugna could be set up 50 yards away from you in the open, and then the operator can be in a hidden area somewhere nearby, but not having to actually expose themselves to use the weapon. This is actually the best quality footage we've seen of a Stugna being used as well, so I hope y'all enjoy seeing that the Russians didn't make it far. As you can see on this video, it happened really quickly. You can see the ATGM kind of on the middle left side of the screen fly towards the T-72B3 and hit it. So I'm going to let y'all see it again. This also appears to be the Arabian export versions of the Stugna, which are called the Skiff. But anyways, here's the rest of the video. So as you can see there, the Russian tank was clearly wiped out, and it's very good news to see. And so now we're going to move on to the next bit of news, where we can see a Russian convoy get attacked. We've seen a decent amount of this stuff, and it's always good to see that the Russians aren't making it far, or anywhere for that matter, without running into some kind of resistance. So anyways, here's the video. And so it sounded like they were taking a lot of heat. We don't really know what happened after the video, but it didn't sound like anything was going well for them, particularly then. So we're now going to move on to the next bit of video, where we can see the Russian casualty rates are piling up. Actually, this isn't a video, this is actually a chart. But anyways, here's the interesting info we've got here. This is a comparison, and this is made to be in context, but it's a direct comparison of British casualties, British combatant casualties in World War II compared to Russian combat casualties, and then dividing them up by the day. And so here we can see that the British actually were taking about half the casualties as the Russians are per day in World War II. Now, World War II is the deadliest war in human history. Okay, so think about that. It's the deadliest war in human history, and the British lost 384,000 soldiers during the entirety of the war, over the course of around 6 years, really, for them. The Russians have been involved in this war for about a month, and even with a conservative figure of 10,000, not going with the Ukrainian one of 16,000, they are losing some 357 troops per day. The British in World War II only lost about 185 average per day. In Vietnam, the US lost about 8 soldiers per day. In Syria, 3 per day. In Iraq, 1.8, really around 2 per day. And then in Afghanistan, you only lost 1 person for every 3 days or so. And so you can get the idea that the Russian war in Ukraine is going terribly, even by the casualty statistics now, because while it's a low number, for the amount of time that's passed, it's an incredibly high figure. So we're now going to move on to the next bit of news we've got in this location unknown, and that is a video showing the poor conditions of Russian soldiers. I like how his muzzle brake is just frozen over. I'm not really sure if that also includes the barrel. So that will be interesting to find out what happens to him later. I don't really know about blockages on the barrels of rifles. I've never had a blockage on any of the rifles I've shot, so I don't know if ice would cause some kind of pressure issue and maybe breach part of the barrel of the rifle. I'm not really an expert in that regard. Whenever I shoot my rifles, I just make sure that nothing dumb like that happens if it was to cause a problem. But anyways, I'm going to let the video continue.
В грязюке. Мои руки, это вообще пиздец. Смотрите. Сейчас вытягиваем наших 200-х и 300-х и везем их. Надеюсь, это не последнее видео.
Now this guy sounds like a boy. This boy sounds like he is miserable and he's in terrible conditions. And from what we can tell, it looks like he probably is. Now, fighting in a war, I mean, like, you know, just because you're on the losing side or the winning side doesn't mean that the conditions will be ideal. You know, in a war, there's usually always not really ideal circumstances going on. And, you know, that's why there's that terminology of embrace the suck. And so we could get the idea that, you know, of course, war isn't going to be all primrose paths and stuff, but it looks like he's not having a fun time at all. And if that's the overall condition of the Russian armed forces, we can assume that the morale is probably incredibly low and may be leading to soldiers surrendering earlier than they would if their morale was higher. Anyways, we're going to move on to the next bit of news that we've gotten, and we can see a video of a close call for the Russians. This is a T-72B3 turret, and that right there is a puncture hole of some kind of round. I'm not really sure if it was fired from another tank or an ATGM, but it fired right below the ERA plates, almost on the turret ring, which is a weak spot of the tank, but it just got high up enough that it actually hit the kind of like armor belt, I guess you could say, of the turret, and it got caught, and it didn't get into the crew compartment. So this was a very close call for this guy.
До пробития.
So that's pretty interesting stuff. Very close to having that tank knocked out as well, but it appears that little Ivan there will live to see another day. You know, and I mean, like, I'm not wishing bad things upon the Russian soldiers, but, you know, considering they're an invading army, you always have to hope, you know, if you're supporting or fighting for the other side, you always have to hope that tanks and vehicles get knocked out. And unfortunately, if the crew goes with it, you know, that you just have to chalk it up to that. It's either you knock out the tank and maybe get a couple of them in the process collaterally, or they're going to get you for sure. So hopefully this boy will have the chance to surrender, because I wouldn't like for him to get killed unnecessarily. And, you know, probably a lot of them don't even want to be there. They don't even really know why they're there. So we're now going to move on to the next bit of news, where you can see Russian forces routed. They got in a firefight and they turned around and ran. This video is just funny. I'm going to let y'all watch it. So as you can see here, they're outside of their BDRM-4, and it appears that one of them may have been wounded. They're dragging around someone. Yeah, I think that's one of their wounded. So looks like they're not really in a firefight as of now. There is no audio to this video, so it's kind of a bit of guesswork. But we can see now that there's some kind of fire in this next shot, and it appears that there's a large crowd of Russians around this BDRM, and it appears that there's a large group of them running down the street. So now the BDRM is trying to move up, but it's trying to negotiate the massive soldiers that are kind of gathered around it. Now we can see more Russians running down the street. And so it looks like there's still more Russians around the BDRM, but a decent amount of them have run down the street. And so now the drone is taking off, and it's showing these soldiers. I'm not really sure exactly what's happening here in this video. It's very unclear. It's not really a clear picture being made out of this, but it looks like... Well, the driver's still in the BDRM, so we know they haven't bailed out. But something is on fire, and it looks like they are trying to run. Well, these guys aren't. Well, now they are. So something has happened, and now the BDRM is booking. I mean, it's leaving them behind. And we can see that they've kind of like tucked tail and ran, kind of in a way. They're still running. There's also a white flag over this building here. It looks kind of like some kind of a... Really, it just looks like a normal house. I was about to say a church, but when you take a second look at it, it looks like a house. I'm not really sure if that's some kind of a little field hospital or some sort of like neutral facility that they've set up to take care of wounded or civilians or whatnot. But anyways, a very interesting video nonetheless. It appeared that they were running from something, but we don't know exactly what they were running from in terms of Ukrainian resistance. Now we can see a new format, a new mode of unboxing videos here. As you can see, these Ukrainian soldiers are unpacking an AT-4 anti-tank launcher from Sweden.
Розпаковка.
Ти робиш?
Що це таке? Що це таке взагалі?
Якась американська хуйня, напевно. Напевно.
Нікому не кажи.
Як воно? Дивимося, та ось це ще. Ось це.
Головне, щоб не бабахнуло.
Не попав. Так, туди. Так. Ого. О, а що це?
Давай швидше.
It's Christmas, come all over again.
Це, походу, швед.
Це не та італійська, блядь, пластмасова граната, блядь, ні?
Що це за...
Грузило спереду, знімай теж.
Охереть, я перший раз таке бачу навіть, чесно. Це, блядь, воно ще й масло?
Да? А якою стороною?
О, Сократ, я думаю, це швед, але я не знаю, яка це версія.
Швед, вот.
Заглушка.
If only I could get that lucky during Christmas, if you know what I mean. Anyways, we're now going to move on to the next bit of news, where we can see that the Ukrainians have captured a reloading vehicle for what may be a TOS or maybe some other kind of MLRSs like a grad. But anyways, here's the video. As you can see, kind of the run-of-the-mill reloading vehicle. Just some pretty normal stuff. It's on a T-72 chassis, a T-72 hull without the turret. So that's the end of that video. Don't really have much to say about it, but interesting nonetheless, and it's good to know that the Ukrainians still keep getting free equipment courtesy of the Russians. We're now going to move on to the second to last bit of location unknown news, where we see the Ukrainians get involved in a firefight. Unfortunately, I'll have to mute this because I just realized there's copyrighted music in this. As you can see, they're just driving the Toyota. As we all know, Toyota is the most reliable brand of vehicles that can be used in a war zone all over. There's a lot of proof for that. Now it looks like they're behind a... I'm not really sure. BTR-4, I believe, is what the Ukrainians call those. See a large group of Ukrainian soldiers moving down that street. And now it's just panning around from video to video, showing mass amounts of Ukrainian troops in an unknown location. Now we can see the Ukrainians moving down the street. Now we can see them getting in the firefight. Unfortunately, I can't get you all the audio for this because it has copyrighted music playing over it. But they're getting in a firefight with Russians inside of this village, hopefully pushing them out. We can see what appears to be, and this is really neat, a captured Russian Tiger that's now been painted up in Ukrainian colors like the yellow and blue, and now they're starting to use it for themselves. Very cool stuff. It's very neat to see that they're actually reusing the captured vehicles they get. But anyways, moving on from that. And so that's the end of that video, and that's really all the news we've got. We're now going to move on to the next location unknown, which is showing, and this is very somewhat disturbing content, but I believe that it is something to watch and look at to know the actual situation of the war inside of Ukraine. But here are some pictures of conditions inside of a children's hospital, and it's just terrible, and I hate it a whole load, but I'm just going to show you all the pictures because things like this in a war are the thing, you know, and it's a terrible thing to think about, and it's a terrible thing to look at. And so hopefully, you know, think about this and hopefully help out our cause and trying to help out UNICEF, help out these kids. And so I'm going to show you all these pictures because these poor kids are inside of this children's hospital that's being boarded up the best it can in preparation for any kind of Russian bombardment. But you can see here that the conditions just aren't ideal. And so hopefully these kids will stay safe. I just hate it. It's terrible stuff. Don't really have much to say about it. It's unfortunate. And so now we're going to move on to the next bit of news, where we can see that down in the Sumy area, nothing has happened again today. The action around Sumy appears to be coming out incredibly slowly, so I'm assuming that there's not really a lot going on around here, and if there is, it's nothing but good news for the Ukrainians, as it appears they keep on pushing the Russians back across all fronts. The same cannot be said for the area around Troistinets, where we can see that the Russians have been pushed back, and we can now see that more pictures have been taken inside of the village of Troistinets, showing the destroyed Russian vehicles.
Тростянець, район ЖД вокзала.
So you can see damage all over. Destroyed Russian vehicles, of course. That is the norm these days. You can see one on the Mistas. This actually was a location unknown until I realized that from yesterday, this Mista and its paint scheme and the location it is in exactly matches up with the pictures taken the other day from Troistinets. So this is really just a video version of the pictures we saw yesterday when the Ukrainians liberated the village of Troistinets.
Повністю знищений район.
And so that's all we got for that in the area of Troistinets in general. We don't know if the Ukrainians are continuing to push them back up towards Berolima, but we'll just have to wait and see if that is the case. I'd also like to take a moment, because Matthew is here, and I don't want him to feel left out too much. I would like to take a moment to recognize some of our largest donors to UNICEF tonight, because I would like y'all to get the appreciation y'all deserve for helping out such a wonderful cause, as, you know, helping out children in Ukraine and make sure that they don't starve and die of thirst. And so, Matthew, do we have anyone that we would like to recognize tonight?
All right, so I just want to say good evening, chat. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight and helping out with the charity. So far, we're up to 4.2 thousand, which is absolutely amazing. We're only about 40 minutes into the stream so far. So our largest donor of the night so far has been Ryan Comiskey. He puts in a donation of $500. Thank you very much, Ryan. That's a phenomenal amount of money to put toward a wonderful charity. Next up, we have Zeta Lane with a $125 donation, and James Reyes with a $100 donation. Next up is John Leschak with a $100 donation. And below that, we have, I believe it said Dimitri Franza. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. He puts in a donation of $90. And below that, we have a couple of $50 donations from Lancer Hugh, Zeta Lane once again, Studio 2000 Productions, Yvette Alba, Vern, Janos Kovacs, Mike Smith, and we have a $35 donation from Ruben Coolidge. So far, that is our largest donations of the night. And if I have missed you or skipped you, please understand that we will try our best to recognize everybody that we can, but there may be a few that slip through the cracks just because of the large amount of donations that are coming in. So at the moment, those are the largest ones. And we also have quite a few questions coming in tonight as well. But that pretty much wraps up the report for the donations at the moment.
Gotcha. And of course, we'll be saving the questions tonight until the very end. So if y'all do have questions, do know that Matthew is looking through them and he's trying to gather up some for the end of the stream. But it seems like a lot of people like the news. But of course, tonight is a special night. It's a fundraiser night. So I am going to take a couple of breaks to recognize some of our supporters and people who are helping out and making sure that UNICEF will have donations going towards them, so that way they can continue the good work they're doing in Ukraine at the moment. And so now we're going to move on towards the area of Belgorod, where we can see today that a little oopsie happened, and I'm going to let y'all see it because it appears that this mistake could have become a really big one over a short amount of time. So I'm going to let y'all see it, and I think y'all realize what's going on here, and I'll explain it at the end just for those of y'all who may not catch on. And so, little oopsie here, but those are mines. And the guy just opened up the back of the truck and dropped them all over the floor. Apparently they weren't armed, obviously, of course, because they're being transported, and I believe that you have to actually arm them before they can explode. But nonetheless, that's not really the kind of mistake that you would just like to make at random, is to just have a whole bunch of mines just fall out of the back of a truck onto the ground. So, not really good stuff. Kind of a little bit of a mistake on that guy's part. Think he'll have a talk with a manager later. We'll have to see. Maybe they're going to start making him transport leaf springs so that way they can get him into less dangerous work and not get everyone killed. And so now we're going to move on to the area of Kharkiv, where once again, I have to give the disclaimer that abnormally, there has been no news that's come out of Kharkiv to show that any kind of fighting is occurring whatsoever. We don't really know exactly what is happening in Kharkiv. All we know is that the only bit of news we've gotten today is that there was a helicopter from the Russian side that fired its autocannon, 30mm autocannon, into some kind of residential zone. So I'm going to let y'all see it out there in the distance. And so, very, very weird stuff. We have never actually seen, so far, a helicopter actually use its autocannon yet during the entirety of this war. And so this is one of the first evidences of video footage we've gotten showing that to be the case. Very odd to me. Very interesting as well. So, just like to say that that's interesting. And what's much more interesting to me is that we've seen no action out of Kharkiv. We haven't even heard of bombardments lately. And so I'm wondering what's going on here, because I feel like the Russians are probably getting nothing but bad news if it's the case that there's nothing coming out of Kharkiv except for this one video today and yesterday. And so we're now going to move on down towards the southern area, where we can see that there was some toss action south of Izium. It appears that they were firing more toss thermobaric warheads towards an unknown location, but I'm just going to let y'all see the video, because once again, this is proof and evidence that the Russians are committing more war crimes during the entirety of this war.
Один вроде, блядь. Уходит. Один только отхуячил вроде. Подняли оба, один отхуярил.
As you can see there, some pretty interesting stuff. Once again, more evidence of war crimes, and it's incredibly unfortunate to see that this is just what the Russians stoop down to. It's what they do every day. This is kind of like their mode of operation, and hopefully someone will step up sometime and stop them. So now we're going to move on to the southern front, and we're going to see what's happened in Luhansk. We can see here in the area of Luhansk, it appears that the Russians are at least committing to some kind of action, although it seems to be low intensity, and they are firing SPGs at the Ukrainian side. So I'm going to let y'all see this video. So we can see it just appears to be barrage after barrage. They have an MTLB here that has like some kind of a little steel side skirt on it, which is interesting. the farmers will have a good time using that to plow the fields next next planting season. Wish them the best of luck getting those tanks, because I'm sure that they'll break down in a field not too far from there. So we're now going to move on to the area of Mariupol, where we've gotten a load of news today. More news than we've gotten on a normal day, which shows that there may be a decent amount of action, and there may be progress in one way or another towards the story of Mariupol and its end, unfortunately. It appears that from the videos we're getting today, because we're not getting a lot from the Ukrainian side anymore, it's almost nothing but Russian videos, this may be suggesting that the Russians are starting to have a decent amount of success in Mariupol, and that the city may fall soon. That's not a big deal to me, though, because I feel like Mariupol has already done its part defending itself for this long during the war, and they've tied up thousands of man-hours and resources and soldiers that could have been elsewhere on this front line so long that even if it was to fall within the next few days, it's already done its part to help Ukraine manage to get back an offensive and start pushing the Russians out. And so the first bit of video that we've gotten today is another TOS one being used near Mariupol. It's weird to me though that down in the south there is no like Razputitsa or heavy rain or anything, and also it appears to be so warm down there at the moment, although we don't have any weather reports and news about it. It appears to be warm enough that whenever the snow has come through, it's melted, and then the grass has now become dry enough that it can easily catch on fire like we see here. So that's really interesting to me, that the weather conditions are much more different in the south of the country than the north. But we're now going to move on to the news inside of the city itself. As we can see that there's been some Chechen action in Mariupol today, and so I'm going to let y'all see the video and see it for yourselves. Honestly, you know something weird about all the Chechen videos is that whenever you watch them, there's like no one shooting rather than them. Like every time you hear these videos, it's like the area is completely abandoned and they're just the only ones there. And you know, in the videos that we've ever gotten from the Ukrainians, you always hear gunfire going on in the background, so you know it's an actual firefight. But with the Chechens, it's always a question of where are they really? Like where is this? Because there's no firefight going on. There's not even the sound of anything happening in the distance. It's like they're in the middle of nowhere and nothing's going on. So I'm going to let the video continue because honestly, this isn't trying to be biased or anything, but due to the lack of it even being convincing, I'm thinking that all of this is staged, that the Chechens show on video. So anyways, I'm going to let the video continue.
Papa?
And so that's the end of that video. That's really all we have. We don't have a lot of information to go either way on that for now. And so we're going to move on to the next bit of news we can see, which is some more tanks, Russian tanks in action inside the city of Mariupol. So we're going to let y'all see this video. It's actually from the top of the tank. I believe this does have copyright. Yeah, it does have copyright music. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to leave it unmuted. Just kind of give you all a play-by-play of what's going on as it happens. So as you can see here, it's looking out towards the burned out city. You can tell this is a real big propaganda coup, this one tank right here, because they have a drone following it as well, along with a camera on the turret showing you where the gun's looking. So I think, much like the Chechen video, this one's probably staged as well. But let me know in the comments what y'all think, because I'm kind of looking towards that as being a likely, kind of like, explanation to this video. Anyways, I'm going to let it continue. Then we can see the tank firing right here. And now they show it about 70 times. And what's also interesting, and what's really neat is about T-72s in general, is that T-72s are autoloaders, so there's no crewman inside of this tank who's doing the job of loading the gun. That's pretty much the case in all Russian tanks. Unlike Western tanks, which have a crew of 4 where there's always a loader who manually does the loading himself, in Russian tanks, they cut out the 4th guy and they made an autoloader. So the tank does all of the loading and unloading of the spent casings on its own. And so whenever a T-72 gets done firing, it has this little door on the back of the turret that opens up and it pops out the spent casing of the round that was fired. You can see that here when I click play. See, it shoots the round out and then that little door will close, but it didn't show us that. So now the tank has picked another target in a totally different area very quickly from what we can tell in the video, which is odd. Nonetheless, it fired again, and then we can see the little auto-loader door in the back here in a second if it shows it. Now it's going to go through the tank firing like 7 times. It pops out the shell. Golly, wait a minute, hang on. That's like 30 little casings there. Like, how long has this thing been here? Honestly, I think that they've been doing and redoing these shots. They're like, again. Maybe every single time we're seeing this tank fire in the video, it's actually a totally separate time. Because there are so many casings here all around. That's like, this tank has been here for days. Just firing at the city, with wild abandon. This is weird. But anyways, I'm going to let the video keep going. And so now the tank starts backing up. That's also the fastest speed that a Russian tank can back up at, because the Russians didn't really think about putting in reverse gears. So I believe it only has like 1 or 2 reverse gears. So it can only go about 2 miles per hour in reverse. You can see all the film crews back there like, yay, good job, you shot at the city that was 2 miles away. I'm just kind of kidding about that and exaggerating. I'm sure they're not actually film crew, but it does seem like this one tank in particular kind of had a whole propaganda coup thing going on with it, considering that they had drone footage and turret footage at the same time of the exact same tank. So now we're going to move on to the news from the rest of the city, where we can see pictures from inside of Mariupol showing some of the action inside the city. These appear to have been taken from a professional. But regardless whether they were taken from a professional or an amateur, you can see the situation in Mariupol is one that is rather serious. And so that's all the pictures we've got, and now we're going to move on to the next bit of news we've got inside the Mariupol area, which are Russian tanks present inside the city. I'm going to show you all this. Once again, it's much like a run-of-the-mill video that you see, where Russian tanks are just kind of moving throughout the city, but nonetheless, here's the video.
Приехали поддержать нас.
I gotta say something. They really need to change out the filter on that tank right there, because that's one old filter right there to be puffing out that much smoke. This thing's pretty much a steam train at this point. But anyways, I'm gonna let the video continue. Give a little bit more commentary as well, because I know that everyone doesn't like to watch a video and just, you know, look at it. I mean, like, you can do that anywhere, but you come here for commentary. So, you see that. Now that's not smart, okay? That's not smart at all right there, because the thing is that tanks are only strong on the front, and the sides are much weaker, and then the back is not armored at all, really. And so turning the tank 90 degrees to the side and looking down the street where you're firing is not a smart move at all, because that's going to set you up for being hit with an ATGM if they're able to get one, you know, lined up and fired. So that's not really a smart call on their part. You can see that the tank is backed up. It seems like the other tank is now moving forward to take its place, perhaps. That's also a T-72B3 from what it seems. This one's having a little bit of a bucking problem, and now they've smoked everyone else, kind of like rolled coal on them in a way. And so now it's taking the position of the other tank. Now the other tank's moved up there once again with another old filter, and now it's fired. And then it fired again. It's fired 2 rounds in quick succession. Now the tank is reloading. Now it's backing up. Once again, smoke filter is just garbage. Well, not the smoke filter. The filter in general is garbage and it's producing smoke. And then we can see the Russian soldiers wearing, like, tennis shoes. It's really weird to me how the Russians keep on wearing tennis shoes. Like, they don't have... Like, it seems like in the Russian military, it isn't like a dress uniform kind of deal where you actually have, like, a set regulation. Like, they give them boots, and then if they decide not to wear boots and they go buy, like, sneakers or something, and panic buy them before Nike closes down or something like that, then that's perfectly fine for them to wear, and that's really weird to me as well. But, you know, then again, the Russians are a whole different breed of fighting nation, you know, really weird in many ways. And so we're now going to move on to the last bit of Location Unknown news, where we can see, well, not Location Unknown, I'm sorry, I'm tired, I've been working all day, I'm sorry, please bear with me, everyone, but this is video footage of Mariupol before and after. So take a look at it. This is pretty much showing the exact same areas before the war and after the war. So take a look at it and look at the amount of damage that the Russians have wreaked on just normal Ukrainian civilians. There's a load of civilians still in the city, several 100,000 of them, and there's no way out for them. So just remember that when you watch this video and think of all these people who are suffering every single day with no end in sight in this war. Hopefully, the suffering of these citizens of Mariupol will not be in vain, and Mariupol will hold for a much longer time and buy up even more time, resources, and effort on the part of the Russians, and hopefully help the Ukrainians get an even better leverage in the war that they're already appearing to be turning the tide in. So I'm going to let y'all see the video. I mean, this is night and day. You can't even tell the cities were this. Well, this city is the same one before and after the war. This is terrible. I really hate to look at it. And I believe that right there is actually the children's theater that was bombed to the ground, pretty much razed in a way. And so we're now going to move on to the next bit of news outside of Mariupol. We're now going to move on to the rest of the country. And now we're going to go on to the area of Kherson, where today we can see that the Ukrainians apparently overran some Russian positions. We're not exactly sure where in the Kherson region, but we have seen that they did overrun them and apparently capture more vehicles.
Армія розбита. От вам, ребята, бля, як воювати проти українців. Думали? Щас. Думали, що возьмете нас нахрапом. Та ніхуя, ребята. Не вгадали ви. Ми до тих приїхали. Побросали, тікали. Пленні вилазять і вилазять. Здаються.
So that's the end of that. But you can see that they've captured more vehicles, and that's always good news to know that the Ukrainians are still holding up a pretty good fight. But one thing I would like to say is make sure to donate to UNICEF. You know, we've done fundraiser after fundraiser, and we've raised some $60,000 cumulative for both the Red Cross and Doctors Without Borders. And so if y'all could help out UNICEF as well, helping out inside of Ukraine, that would mean a lot to me and of course mean a lot to the Ukrainians that desperately need this help. And so make sure to support them as much as possible. And also, real quick, I forgot that actually in between... Alright, so it appears the OBS disconnected for just a second there. I'm not really sure if y'all are still on the air with me or not. But I forgot, in between the Northern Front and the Eastern Front, I actually was supposed to donate $100 as well. And so if y'all will take a break with me, maybe y'all can match me. I'm going to put $100 in as well to support UNICEF, because I do that every single time we do a fundraiser. So bear with me for just a second, and I'm going to put $100 in. Y'all should see that in the chat really soon. All right, and I'm back. Hopefully y'all saw that. And I also forgot, thank you very much, Daniel, for mentioning that. I forgot because apparently Matthew and me didn't exchange notes last night, but I was supposed to add an extra $5 to that, so I made sure to put that in there as well. So I hope y'all all saw that, and I hope y'all match me and help me help out UNICEF, and then in turn they'll help out the citizens and children, the unfortunate children like we saw in that children's hospital in Ukraine, and make sure that they have enough food and water to at least survive. And so I thank you all so much once again for helping me support them, because it means a lot to me, and I did this whole entire thing, you know, started it off from the beginning to help them out. And you know, I have friends over there, then I want to make sure that they could get the news and see what was going on, because things weren't exactly ideal at the beginning of the war. Things were in chaos in the middle of Ukraine, and so I was trying to do as much to help them out as possible. And so I thank you all once again for supporting with anything you can. Even $5 from every one of y'all will help a long way in helping them out inside of Ukraine. And so make sure to donate if you can, and if you can't, that's fine, but any bit helps, and I'm sure that they are all incredibly appreciative of any help that y'all can give them. And so now we're going to move on to the news internationally, because we've actually covered all the news inside of Ukraine. And inside of Amsterdam today, we can see that there are once again large protests that swept the country. We can see people adorned with the Ukrainian flags out in the streets, supporting what they believe in. It's good to know that Ukraine always has international support all around the world, and now Western leaders are starting to step up and get to the batting plate in a way, and really start to try and stand up for Ukraine from what we can tell, and really make sure that the Russians just don't keep on violating the rules of war over and over and over. We're now going to move on to the train station in Copenhagen, where we can also see there that the Danish had put up Ukrainian flags alongside theirs in overwhelming support for Ukraine. And so I'm very glad to see that once again. Also, this train station is beautiful. It's a very nice looking one. And so now we're going to move on from that to the news inside of Russia, where we can see that today... yes?
I just want to quickly interrupt. It looks like we are still on the stream starting soon page at the moment.
Stream starting soon, huh? 1 second, let me check that. Oh, okay. Got you. Let me switch that over real quick. Sorry about that, everyone. That was not supposed to happen. Apparently, it switched over to the wrong one. And so now we're going to go back, and I'll show you all the pictures real quick for everything that was missed. Here's the protest in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. Show you all that real quick. So you can see right here, the protesters clad in the Ukrainian flags. Once again, it's good to know that there's worldwide support for that. We're now going to move on to the train station in Copenhagen. Show this to y'all once more. Sorry about that brief interruption there. I apparently clicked the wrong buttons and the wrong thing popped up. But anyways, you can see that the Ukrainian flags are alongside the Danish ones in the train station. And once again, it's always good to see that pretty much the whole of Europe has stood up with Ukraine in this cause and that they're going to support them 100%. And so now we're going to move on into St. Petersburg, where we can see a demonstrator in St. Petersburg apparently covering themselves with red paint in a message saying that Putin is a murderer and there's blood all over Russian hands. A very interesting demonstration, kind of unique in a way, considering that it's a breakaway from the normal protests and posters that people have, and it's kind of more of like a visual protest in a way. But very interesting. I'm glad to know that people in Russia still do not support the war, even if it's dangerous for them to do this kind of thing. And so finally, we're going to move on to the last bit of news we've gotten today, and that's of a weird interaction in between a Russian commander and a wounded Russian soldier. I'm just going to show you all this and not really interrupt because the body language says it all, and I don't really have to say much to commentate on it for y'all to see what's going on in here. So here's the video.
Указом президента Российской Федерации за мужество, отвагу и самоотверженность, проявленные при исполнении воинского долга, ордена мужества награжден ефрейтор Головин Дмитрий Сергеевич.
Дима, от имени Верховного Главнокомандующего министра обороны награждаю, поздравляю с наградой. Желаю тебе выздороветь, встать на ноги.
Спасибо.
Помножить. Семья, жена, дети?
Да, есть. Семья есть.
Откуда сам?
С Кировской области.
Какой должность ты был?
Наводчик. Спасибо.
Looks like he didn't exactly care about the Russian commander or anything going on in there. I think he was... it still kind of looked, honestly, like he was in shock from his wounds, and so I don't really think it was smart to try and make a propaganda effort out of this wounded guy inside of a hospital bed who obviously still is kind of in the recovery phase of his injuries. And so, you know, there we can see, once again, the Russians don't think anything out, at least on the side of the government, and they're still doing things that are just poorly thought out. But anyways, that's the end of the news tonight. And so, Matthew, could you recognize all of our people, everyone who's helped out with the UNICEF donations so far?
Okay, so currently we're sitting at $7.3 thousand, so we are definitely making really good progress on the donations. First up, we have a donation from somebody called the Enforcer for $105. We appreciate your support. Our next one up is from Brian Watikas for $100. The next one up is from Austere Panic for another $100. And let's see here, we have a couple of $50 donations. We have one from Daniel Murray. We have one from John and one from Joseph Neves. And then we have a $40 donation from Ruben Coolidge. And that is the top donations at the moment.
And I thank y'all all so much for helping out. It means a lot to the Ukrainians. And, you know, it means a lot to them, and it'll help them out a lot. And so I got to thank y'all all so much. And I'm very sorry about how I am, you know, kind of like carrying out this thing tonight, because I've been working on college and this all day without a break really in between to do anything. So that wore me out. And then on top of that, I had such little time, and I forgot about drinking a coffee, that I'm trying to get through this entire stream pretty much running on fumes. So please bear with me. I'm sorry if the presentation isn't perfect tonight, but you know, a lot's happened today, and we're trying to still push through because this is the fundraiser night, and I'm here to try and help out Ukraine as much as possible. And so please help me help Ukraine in a way. And so now we're going to move on to the questions. And so what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so the first question up for the night is from Kyle Hagen. He says, Enforcer, what do you make of reports of Russian troops being given nerve agent antidotes in Ukraine?
I don't really know if there is a nerve agent antidote. Let me check that out. Nerve agent antidote. Our antidotes for nerve agent toxicity must be administered within minutes to a few hours following exposure to be effective. Interesting. I didn't actually know there was some kind of antidote for nerve agents. That's very interesting. Didn't know that. If that's true, then that may suggest that the Russians are still trying to go ahead and use chemical agents in Ukraine. And we know that the West has drawn the line and said if they do that, we will get involved. And so we will see this blue line start shifting in some direction, whether it be east or west. We'll have to wait and see, but that will be interesting nonetheless to see if anything comes out of that. But thank you for sharing that info with us. And if it is true, then we'll just have to wait and see what happens. I'm not really sure how to take that, you know, because then again, a lot of these could be inferred in Iraq during the Gulf War because all U.S. soldiers were issued gas masks there. And so you could say, oh, the Americans were preparing to use, you know, chemical agents on the Iraqis, but really they were ready for the Iraqis to use chemical agents on them. So, you know, there's a lot you can interpret from that if it's true. But thank you for sharing that with us. It's very interesting. And so we're going to move on to the next question.
Okay, and real quickly, I just want to recognize a $100 donation from John Petrie, and also want to mention that we have just hit 7.7 thousand on the donations. And once again, everybody, thank you so much for the assistance. This is going to greatly help the people in Ukraine, and I know that if they could thank you personally, they would definitely be doing so. So thank you very much for everyone's support. The next question up is from A Chronic Death. They say, Enforcer, do you think that China will pivot and begin to view Russia as a more valuable target and begin their version of financial aid like they've been doing in Africa?
They may. That's a very good way of looking at this. A very smart way of trying like to interpret the situation. Something I haven't looked at personally. But yes, they may start doing that and may start to implant themselves financially inside of Russia to make sure that Russia is more willing to listen to their interests than anyone because the Chinese will have major sway over them. But we can see then again that the West kind of has already done that with their oil imports from Russia and also all the Western businesses that existed inside of the country, and that appeared to not really control Russia's decision making in the end either. So I can see where that's coming from, but I think the Chinese right now are kind of just trying to play both sides and kind of get Russia a little weak, get the West freaked out, and so that way they can sit there and kind of try and do some things on the side that no one will pay attention to. Although I think the invasion of Taiwan is off the table, so I'll just say that right here. But that was a pretty interesting question. I thank you for posing that one. It's a pretty good one. And so we're going to move on to the next question.
And the next question is from Mamba Mentality. They say, do you think Russia's secret plan is to make more nuclear weapons at Chernobyl?
No, because Chernobyl doesn't really have a lot to do with actual production of nuclear weapons. It's just a heavily radiated area. But radiation isn't something, you know, like pixie dust in a way where you can just scoop it up off the ground and then kind of like press it together and make a nuclear warhead out of it. So I don't think that's exactly what they would be capturing Chernobyl for, and I don't really think that they have plans of doing that because I don't really think that's feasible or how nuclear technology works. But I thank you very much for the question. It is an interesting one. And so we're going to move on to the next one.
Okay, and with that being said, we just hit 8,000 on the donations. Really, really good job there. Next up, we have a question from Down with Putin Save Ukraine. They say, Enforcer, what are the chances that Putin pretends to negotiate to stall and then has his troops regroup to win one relatively unimportant city and then give up?
That's a pretty decent possibility. It's a very specific one, and I don't try and deal in specifics too much because you know, you'd have to expect certain things to happen. You have to make a lot of assumptions to get to that point, really, to cut that short. So I'm not entirely sure if that's what they would be doing. I think at this moment, the Russians have kind of burned out Yeah, I don't even think they could really rally the soldiers to try and push anymore, because from what we're seeing, they're just losing all over. They're losing land in the northern fronts. They're losing land in the eastern fronts. They're losing land in the southern front down here near Mykolaiv and Kherson. And so I don't think that they will be able to rally. I think that at this point, it's all just a matter of how much longer can the Russians hold on to what they took, because we haven't seen them taking anything from now on. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it, but I thank you for the question. It's an interesting one nonetheless. And so we're going to move on to the next question.
And real quick, I just want to recognize a $100 donation from Gene Kraus. Thank you very much for the donation, Gene. We certainly appreciate it. The next question of the night is from Zeta Lane once again. They say, Enforcer, what do you mean when you say a chopper is MIA?
Could you give me a little bit of context to that, Matthew?
I believe they were talking about that video that you're showing earlier of that hind.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I didn't say MIA like missing in action. I meant MI8. I'm sorry if I kind of came off a little bit slurred. I am kind of a little tired, so please bear with me a little bit. But this is, well, not an MI8 here, but I'm talking about this MI8 here. This is an MI8 TV, I believe, but it's still an MI8 nonetheless. And when you look at the cockpit inside of it, if we can get a picture of that, it looks probably a lot like the one we saw in the video. Yep, exactly like it. That's an MI8. So it wasn't MIA like missing in action. It was an MI8 as in the model of helicopter. And also a hind, to clarify that, is an Mi-24. And the normal hind has a shape like this, you know, and there's a whole bunch of variants of them. There's like the Mi-24D, the Mi-24P, and you know, it doesn't really matter. It's a hind. It's an Mi-24, and so that's what they generally look like. So what I was saying actually wasn't MIA, it was MI8. So I'm sorry if that was a mispronunciation on my part, but I thank you for that question, and thank you for letting me clear that up there. And so we're going to move on to the next question.
And real quick, I just want to recognize a $500 donation from Naria. Thank you very much. That is a very generous donation, and that will definitely help the Ukrainians a lot. So the next question up is from Matthew Cabaret. He says, Enforcer, where did you get that kick-ass intro video?
Real quick though, before I answer that question, I would like to personally thank Naria myself. That is the largest donation we've gotten tonight, and it means a lot to me, because every time I do the fundraisers, I'm doing them because I want to make sure that we can help out Ukraine as much as possible, and this is one way I can make sure that we can all help out in a safe way where no one's getting scammed or conned or anything like that. And it's good to know that people like you are out there with hearts of gold. I mean, just wonderful intentions helping out Ukraine. And so I thank you so much once again, because it means a lot to me, and I know that the Ukrainians will be very appreciative of all the help and support that UNICEF will give them. And while they won't be able to thank you directly, Naria, I know that they would be more than happy to know who allowed for UNICEF to get that far and help them out as well. And so I thank you so much. I know that that means a lot to the Ukrainians. And so could I have you rephrase that question again to me, so that way I can make sure to answer it?
So Matthew Cabret asks, where did you get that kick-ass intro video?
I got you. So, if you go to YouTube, I'll show you all this real quick. If you go to YouTube, it's a very simple process. Type in Ukraine War Anthem 2022. Oh, look, my video's right there. But anyways, Ukraine War Anthem 2022. It's the first one right here. And apparently it's like copyright free. I asked a guy if I had to give him credit, and then he said he actually got it from someone else, and it's just never had a copyright put on it. And I thought it was an incredibly stirring and patriotic intro. And so I went and, you know, just started using it in my videos, because I thought it was a perfect, like, synopsis and summary of, like, how I felt about the Ukrainian war and how proud the Ukrainians should be of their national defense. And so if y'all want to, make sure you go over to that guy's channel and check out his video and subscribe to it, because that was an impressively good video. And I don't know if he wasn't the original creator, but I'm so thankful that he uploaded that to YouTube, because that's the only way I saw it. And so make sure to go over there and give him a lot of support, and thanks for putting that video up. And so with that being said, we're going to move on to the next question.
All right, and we are very, very close to reaching 9,000. We're currently, oh, whoa, we just jumped up a lot. We just jumped up to 9.2 thousand. We got very generous donations that just came in. Let me quickly recognize them. We have one from Strats Enigma for $100. Thank you very much for the generosity. Let's see, next up we have a donation from Mikhail Carlson. Thank you very much. That was a $300 donation from him. Very, very generous. And let's see, that appears to be. Also, we have one from Ben's Sudta. Donates $200 THB. Thank you very much for the generosity. That was about the quickest I've ever seen a donation shoot up. That was very, very quick. But anyways, back to the next question. We have the next one from David L. He says, have you seen the sus videos of the so-called Ukrainians killing unarmed Russians? Sketchy at best.
I have not seen those videos. I've seen a lot of stuff. I've seen dogs eating dead Russians. I've seen all kinds of crazy things, but I haven't seen anything like that. So, considering that I would usually say join the Discord and then go in there and share that in the NSFW link so that way we can see that and take a look at that and observe it. Unfortunately, our Discord server kind of went under some kind of Russian bot attack. Apparently we were targeted, and it was kind of an inside job in a way as well. So that's kind of taught me a lesson about trusting just random people to become moderators. But nonetheless, I would tell you to go there and show it, but at the moment that doesn't exist. And so please be patient and give us a couple of days, and we're going to try and look into the Discord issue, get a new one put up, get a whole bunch of safeguards put in so that kind of stuff doesn't happen again. And then we'll have another Discord for everyone to join. So all of my fans who were on the Discord, please be patient. We're going to probably try and make a new Discord server for everyone to go to. And so I thank you all very much for your support and your patience, because we didn't expect that to happen today, and that was really low down. So we're now going to move on to the next question.
And real quickly, I want to recognize a $200 donation from Jim Bertoldo. He just put in that donation. Thank you very much for the support. We're now up to 9.5 thousand on the donation. So thank you very much for all of your support. The next question is from Sonia Dine, who says, where do you think the Russians' next move is going to be? Because I thought it would be Poland. Now I'm thinking possibly Estonia.
I believe that the next move for the Russians would sensibly be the Baltics, because they have Kaliningrad here, so they could shut off this small little corridor that's about 40 miles wide that goes from Poland to the Baltic states fairly easily, although, you know, then again, fairly easily is kind of relative, because they're fighting a Western army. I'm sure that wouldn't be easy for them at all. In fact, it'd be an impossible task. But the Baltic states could be cut off pretty easily from the rest of the West, and the Baltic states could be pretty much conquered separately from the rest of Europe. But it doesn't really matter whether they attacked Poland or the Baltic states, because all of those countries are members of NATO, and so attacking one of them pretty much makes the rest of them declare war on you as well. So it really wouldn't matter which direction they went first, because it would still result in a European, you know, continental war instead of just a minor war in between Russia and like one country at a time. You know, if they attack any of the Baltic states or Poland, that's like, I think, 21 member states of NATO that will all be going to war with Russia at the same time. So it wouldn't go well for them either way. But I thank you very much for the question, and we're now going to move on to the next one.
And the next question is from Finn Geek, who says, Enforcer, do you think we, meaning the US and NATO, should start sending NBC protection equipment to Ukraine?
NBC.
I think that might mean a nuclear protection equipment, potentially. I may be wrong.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I was about to pull up the actual abbreviation for that. I think it's something like nuclear, biological, chemical. And to answer that, I would say, actually, you know, I'm going to kind of take like probably a bit of a questionable stance here, and I'd say no, because here's the thing. We've already laid out to Russia, if they use any of those weapons, we're getting involved. And so I don't really think we should be protecting the Ukrainians against chemical attacks or anything, because it shouldn't happen anyways. And if it does get to that, well, no, that's kind of a stupid point now that I've spoken it out. No, I think we should give it to them, because even if we would get involved, we wouldn't want Ukrainians to die needlessly in the face of something that is a war crime. So yeah, I think we should actually, now that I've talked it out, I was like, that's a dumb point. But yes, I do think that we should send those over. And so I thank you very much for the question. And actually hashing that out kind of made me change my point of view. So I thank you very much for presenting that idea to me. And so we're going to move on to the next question.
The next question is from Sasha Grabowski. I believe how it's said. Hopefully I'm correct. They say, Enforcer, have you covered the video about the supposed mistreatment of Russian POWs? Not sure how old it is, but it seems like propaganda.
I think we already had a question like that earlier, but we did hear about it. I haven't seen it, and so I can't really address it. Once again, I do have to say this. Usually, there are war crimes committed on every side. Like, it would be silly for me to say that the United States didn't commit war crimes in Iraq. We did, but we usually prosecuted the individuals that were involved in the war crimes. But I really can't attest as to whether that would happen or not. I mean, like, really, honestly, stuff like that can just be expected to a point. Because in World War One, let me give you all a little bit of story, you know, because I'm a history guy and I know all about history, and World War One is like my literal like subject of study. In World War One, it was common for Americans to actually just execute German prisoners when we got them in certain cases. Like, for example, if you're in the middle of an offensive and Germans start surrendering, and you can't really tie up manpower trying to watch over them and get them into the rearward parts of the front where they can then be looked over by military police, the US would do something called dropsy disease, where they would just walk them away far enough from the front that the Germans couldn't visibly see it happen, and then they would just shoot them on the spot and then go back up to the front lines. The sergeant would be like, hey, how'd you get back so quick? And then the soldier would just say something like, oh, they all came down with dropsy disease or something like that. That was actually a pretty common occurrence then. And there really is, I don't think, as far as I know, there is any actual provision in the rules of war for saying if you can't take care of prisoners of war, you still must take care of them. So even if it is out there, it may have been a situation where the Ukrainians really couldn't actually look after those prisoners of war, and so it would be easier for them and a strategically sound decision to execute the prisoners instead of letting them live. That type of stuff does happen in war. It's an unfortunate thing, but sometimes prisoners are, executed or killed when there's no way to look out and care for them. So that's kind of my answer to that. I haven't really seen it, though. I'd have to see it for myself to kind of draw my own opinion on it. But thank you very much for the support and the question. I'm glad that you sent in a question. I'm so used to saying support, but thank you very much for the question. It means a lot to me, and I'm glad that you asked that one. That's a very interesting one to kind of delve into, and I think it's something that a lot of people don't think about. They always think that prisoners, when they're captured, they just get taken care of, but if there's no way to take care of them, then what do you do? And then that's when that kind of comes into play. But thank you once again, and so we're going to move on to the next question.
And I just want to quickly mention that we just received a $500 donation from an anonymous donor. Thank you very much. I would love to know your name so we could recognize you on stream, but that's just always amazing to me when people want to donate such a large amount of money to a nice charity and they don't even want any recognition for it. So that's absolutely amazing generosity. We thank you very much for it. You know who you are. Thank you very much. Also, I want to recognize a $100 donation from Dip Dive Duck 1. Thank you very much for your generosity as well. So on to the next question we have from Trademarks and Patents for Growing Businesses. He says, Enforcer, UNICEF has delivered medical supplies to 49 hospitals in 9 regions, including Kiev, Kharkiv, and Dnipro, also Lviv, improving access to healthcare for 400,000 mothers, newborns, and children. It's really a great charity.
It really is, and that's why I picked this one tonight. I wanted to make sure that I always try and make sure that the charities I pick are good. And so, while the Red Cross, I do have to be honest, I didn't really like the actions of the Red Cross and what they did with Russia, but then again, the Red Cross kind of just plays every side, and they try and keep neutral and everything. So I can kind of understand where they were coming from with that, but I still didn't like that, because even countries that are neutral, like Switzerland, that never pick sides, picked a side in this occasion, this event. And so that tells you a lot about the severity of it. And for the Red Cross to still try and play a neutral party, it kind of makes them look like they're out of touch with what's going on. But I do think that UNICEF is an incredibly good option, a great fundraiser to endeavor into, because they do a lot of good and they do a lot of help around the world. And so I thank you very much for saying that, because it's quite true. They have helped out in a great deal in Ukraine as of the moment. And so that being said, we're going to move on to the next question.
And I just want to recognize a $111 donation from Janos Kovacs once again. Thank you very much for your continued generosity. And our next question of the night is from Sarah Perigo, who asks, Enforcer, do you think Ukraine is really going to give in to Russian demands eventually?
No, I don't think they will. At the moment, they're currently pushing the Russians back in most places around the country. And so I think that in the end of it all, the Russians really aren't going to recover from their lost initiative, and the Ukrainians are going to continue to push them back due to the Russians having poor supply lines, low morale, and just conducting themselves poorly in the field with little to no training from what we can see on the part of their soldiers. So I don't think the Russians will be able to rebound from this. So I don't think the Ukrainians will have to submit to any demands in the future. But I thank you once again for the question. It's a pretty interesting one. And so we're going to move on to the next one.
And the next question is from Jethro Bradley, who says, Enforcer, how close to Mariupol are the nearest Ukrainian forces, and how likely is it that they will try to make a push toward the city and liberate it?
The closest Ukrainians on my map, because this is what my front line looks like, and if we're to assume it's correct, down the fastest major road, which looks like this one, they're about 26 miles away. So that is something to consider. Says that's a pretty decent amount of ground to cover. If my front line is correct, they would have to go from Volnovakha down the H20 to Mariupol. That's 26 miles, and the average military can cover around 8 miles a day, 8 to 10 miles a day. So it would take them about 2 or 3 days if they were completely uncontested to get down to the area of Mariupol. So it would take them some time, and so if they ever tried an offensive, it would probably take about 3 days. But we're not entirely sure. It may be quicker, maybe slower. They may go for another road that seems to be more advantageous. Not entirely sure, but I do thank you for the question, and so we're going to move on to the next one.
And the next question is from Diffuse56, who says, General Keane said today on mainstream media that the U.S. has been pressuring Zelensky to take a deal with the Russians. True or false? In Slava Ukraine.
I haven't heard anything about that, and I don't think that's necessarily true, because why in the world would the West be so vehemently supporting Ukraine and then fighting the Russians and then try and also at the same time tell them to accept some kind of peace treaty when we see that they're winning? I don't really think that that would be in line with what the West has been doing so far. It seems to be counterintuitive, but who knows? Sometimes the government operates that way, but that's kind of my stance on it. And so I thank you very much for the question. And with that being said, we're going to move on to the next one.
Okay, and our next question of the night is from Zissimo, who says, Enforcer, why do you say that NATO is going to get directly involved? What makes you think that? The USA and the EU said they are not planning on sending any troops to the Ukraine.
They said they're not planning on sending any troops to Ukraine, but they have built up soldiers in the Baltic states and Poland, and it seems like they're still in the process of doing that, although it appears to be somewhat hushed. We also know that Biden's rhetoric has gotten a decent bit, and I'm saying Biden, really the president of the U.S., I don't really care who they are, but the president of the U.S. started to get a lot more hostile in their statements against Russia, and seems to be outright saying somewhat antagonistic things like the guy's a butcher, a war criminal, and so on, which shows that the stance inside of the leading Western government is starting to become much more openly hostile against the Russians instead of just some sort of light detestment of the action. So I'm thinking that we may start seeing something happen soon, considering that they have said if any use of nuclear, biological, or chemical weapons is ever found in Ukraine, or if there's any proof of it, the West will get directly involved. And so that's why I'm thinking that. So I hope that answers that question in a good bit. And I'm sorry if I didn't answer it too well, because I am exhausted right now. So please bear with me. But I hope that answers your question to a good deal. And so we're going to move on to the next question.
And don't worry, Enforcer, we will be placing an order for some coffee here soon, so don't worry about it. Our next question up for the night is from FNG Gaming, who says, Enforcer, have you heard the leaked phone call of a Russian wife wishing her husband death out there on the battlefield so she can collect his death money? Ouch.
I have not heard about that. There's a lot of stuff that goes on every day, and while I do try and collect as much news as possible, I don't hear about everything. So if that is the case, I may have not heard about that. So I thank you for sharing that with us, and I'll see about looking into that if I can. But that being said, we're going to move on to the next question.
Okay, and the next question is from Mamba Mentality once again, who says, Enforcer, do you know if the USA is sending peacekeepers into Ukraine?
They are not. I can answer that one pretty quickly. They're not. Because that would be pretty much like a direct involvement in the war for Western countries if that happened to make up the peacekeeping force. And so I can answer that question pretty quickly. And so I got to say this, y'all. I think we're going to end the stream around 11 o'clock tonight. And so I'm wondering, can we all do this together collectively? Can we get to $12,000 before the end of this stream? Let me know if we can, because I'd love to see if we could get just that much more going to UNICEF by the end of the night. And so that being said, let's get on to the next question.
Okay, and the next question is from Torvaldsen, who says, Enforcer, don't you have a second monitor to show the live chat and the screen your viewers see? If not, it's the best $80 investment you can make for streaming.
I do not actually have two monitors. I only have one. There's been a bit of a rumor going around that I'm just like poor. I'm like Scrooge McDuck or something. But the thing is I have like, not to get like into personal things or anything, but I'm like almost broke. So I don't really have enough money to even go and do that right now. So thank you for the suggestion, but unfortunately I don't think that'll be happening anytime soon, due to how everything's operating with YouTube and monetization and all that stuff. But I thank you nonetheless, and so we're going to move on to the next question.
And also, Torvaldsen, if you can tell me where we can find that $80 monitor, please let me know, as I would like to know where you can find it that cheap. But nonetheless, I want to quickly mention that we have reached $10,777 on the donations. Thank you very much once again. I know I'm sounding like a broken record. However, thank you very much for the donations. So the next question up is from Colin McOwen. He says, Enforcer, have you heard that a Russian commander killed himself when he realized that only 1 out of 10 reserve tanks in storage were serviceable? Most had been stripped for parts.
I have not heard that. That would be kind of a weird story. Like, just imagine this guy. He's sitting there in his office. He's like, "Hey, how many tanks do we have running?" They're like, "Oh, only 1 out of 10." And he just goes and like pulls out his pistol and just blows his. I don't know. I don't think that'd actually be a thing for someone to just blow their brains out on the spot after hearing that. But I don't know. Maybe, there's been some weird stories coming out of this war here and there. So maybe that's something that did happen. But I haven't heard about it to be able to attest to it either way. But I do thank you for sharing that with us, and so we're going to move on to the next question.
All right, and the next question up is from Anonymous, who says, Enforcer, with the Ukraine's progress, what are the chances Ukraine will go all in to take everything back, including Crimea?
I don't think they'll try and retake Crimea. They may try and push through Donetsk and Luhansk. I could see that, because while Russia recognized them as little independent countries, they don't really have the same protection that Crimea has, because Crimea was annexed by the Russian Federation and is considered a Russian state. And so if Ukraine tried to push into Crimea, that's like attacking Russian sovereign land at this point as far as the Russian government is concerned, which would probably make them actually use some kind of serious measures to stop that, like nuclear weapons maybe. I don't really know, though. That's kind of my opinion on it, so take it with a grain of salt. But nonetheless, we're going to move on to the next question.
Okay, I just want to quickly recognize a $50 donation from Aaron Packman. Thank you very much. And that is actually the final question of the night, it appears like. If anybody has any more questions they want to send in, of course, just use the @Enforcer tag, and we might be able to squeeze a couple more questions in here if the Enforcer is not ready to wrap it up just yet. But that is all for the moment.
Okay, well, didn't expect to run out of questions, but, I guess it goes how it goes. I guess we'll sit here for a couple of minutes, well, maybe just a minute or so, see if a couple of more questions roll in. If we get some, we'll answer them, but this may start being the end of the stream in a way. I would love to see if we could get up to $12,000, though, because that would be nice to know that we did get that far towards helping out UNICEF. So let's see if we can, and if we can't, that's fine. We still got $11,000 nearly, which is a huge deal. I mean, like, that's impressive as well. But let's see if we can get some more questions here. Do we have any that look like they're rolling in at the moment?
So I'm just going to read a couple of comments that are coming in, and you can respond to them if you'd like. We have one from Texas Wonderkind, who says, Crimea would be a really tall order. The area is huge, and it is vital to Russian Navy. And frankly, Crimea was not traditionally part of Ukraine, and it was Russian Federation for 200 years before.
Yeah, but I mean, like, the rest of Ukraine was like Russian Federation for about 200 years before as well. So, you could really make that argument for the rest of Ukraine, even the southern area of Ukraine, where Donetsk and Luhansk is, and the Donbass. And so, you can make that argument of, does Ukraine really own that as well, or was that really Russian? So, kind of see where you're coming from with that, but, not really. But anyways, interesting comment nonetheless. We got any more?
So we have one from Dan K. He says, Enforcer, do you think the West will use the money from the super yachts that have been taken from the oligarchs to help rebuild Ukraine?
I think they will. They're actually talking about a bill right now that all the seized assets of the Russian oligarchs will be used to help rebuild Ukraine. Like they'll send that money to Ukraine and help them rebuild. While that's on the table right now, it looks like it may become a thing. So that may be something that does happen, but we'll just have to wait and see if that is the case. But I thank you for the question. Pretty interesting one. And so we're going to move on to the next one.
And we have another comment from Jean O'Reilly. She asks, did Russian enlisted run over their commander's legs? Was that the video we saw earlier with everyone running around?
I'm not entirely sure. We all just know that they were running away from something, so I don't really know. I don't think it was because someone would have probably tried to pull the driver out of the tank and it wouldn't have looked so kind of like calm, at least amongst themselves. But who knows? Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But I've heard about that a bit, but I haven't ever gotten any proof or evidence to show that that was something that happened on video. So I thank you for the question. Interesting one. And we're going to move on to the next one.
Okay, and to sort of use your own phrase with that being said, we're going to stick around, like the enforcer said, till 11 or so that way we can keep the donations running. We don't want to cut it off too early because we want to continue to sort of get closer to our goal. So our next comment is from John G. He says, Enforcer, this is great coverage. Just wondering, did you know Sweden has a defense pact with Norway and Denmark, although not being in NATO?
I did know that. There's kind of like a little bit of a weird thing that happens with the Scandinavian countries because they're so historically connected with each other, kind of like through the Three Kingdom thing that they used to have, where Denmark was kind of like the lead country, but really everything in Scandinavia kind of fell under it, except for Finland, which was Russian territory for a long time. But yes, I do know about that pact. So I thank you very much for bringing that up. Unfortunately, I can't really talk about that too well right now because I'm so tired, like I can't even get my mind going to really say anything good. But yes, I do know about it. So thank you for bringing that up. And we're going to move on to the next question.
And I just want to recognize a couple of large donations. We have a $269 donation from Putin, my butt, when. Thank you very much for the donation. Also, we have a $50 donation from Kihang Chen. Thank you very much for your generosity as well. And another $50 donation from PH Youth Center 1 Official. Thank you very much for your donation as well. Also, I've noticed a couple of people asking about the Discord again. I think they might have not caught the speech earlier. If you just want to run over a little bit about our Discord again, that would probably be very helpful to the viewers.
I got you. So the Discord server was attacked by some Russian bots with help from the inside from one mod that was AFK, and apparently he was just a plant the whole time or something like that. But anyways, he showed up, caused hell, brought in like 1,000 bots that just started going off and crazy and stuff, and so we had to shut the whole thing down pretty much. It still exists, but I'm not adding a link to it because we're probably going to shut that one down and open up a new one. But I mean, like the idiot who did it, really, because it was a stupid thing to do, doesn't realize that that's really not going to change anything. A new server will be made. The safeguards will be even better on that one, and then we'll just keep on running and doing what we do. I mean, like I don't understand what the whole goal behind anyone's objective is. It's like, what are you trying to like stop the fundraisers to help out organizations? Like, you know, that's pretty much pro-Russian activity in itself, anti-Ukrainian to say the least. So I don't know. I didn't really like the idea of something like that happening, but nonetheless it did, and we're trying to fix it right now. And so as of the moment, the Discord's pretty much been shut down, and we're trying to figure out a new way to go about that and make sure that things are a lot more safe. So I thank you very much once again for the question, and also I hope that kind of explains what happened. But thank you nonetheless, and we're going to move on to the next question.
Okay, and I just want to quickly recognize a $100 NZ donation from Michael C. Thank you very much, Michael, for the support. The next question up is from Zasismo, who says, I heard about the Russians are trying to take, or excuse me, let me start over. I heard about the Russians trying to push for a quick referendum in Donbass to join the Russian Federation. Do you have any info on that?
I haven't heard about that, but that wouldn't be far out of the Russian playbook because that's exactly what they did in Crimea over the course of 23 hours. Crimea went from Ukrainian land to an independent state to a state of the Russian Federation. So I could see that happening. But I haven't really heard anything about that yet, so I'll just have to wait and see in the coming days if we do. But once again, just to remind everyone who may be new to the stream, there will not be a stream tomorrow for the first time ever. I will be taking the day off, so that way I can kind of rest, recharge, and do a couple of other things that I have to do for college. But I thank you all once again for your understanding. And so we're going to move on to maybe a few more questions, but it's nearing time. How close are we, Matthew, to actually reaching the goal of $12,000?
So we're currently sitting at exactly $11,838 with our goal being 25,000. So we are getting there, but we are quite a ways from it. But we've had a lot of generous donors tonight. So even if we don't reach the goal, this is still a tremendous help for those in Ukraine.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. And I think I'm not really sure why we haven't reached the goals like we used to before, because we reached the $25,000 goals and then some last times. But I guess tonight's kind of been like a slow night. But I still thank everyone who turned out and helped out nonetheless, because y'all have done great things. Of course, y'all have all helped out as usual, and I'm so proud that y'all continue to support Ukraine. I guess it's not getting as much attention in the public eye anymore, and so people are kind of getting worn out, and maybe they're not donating as much to causes that are currently active in Ukraine. And that's kind of a sad thing, you know, that wars can go on for long enough that people just stop caring and people stop supporting and donating and such, if that is what's happening here. But nonetheless, I thank everyone so much who came and supported tonight's fundraiser. It means a lot to me, and if we can reach $12,000, I'll be happy. But once again, if we can't reach 12,000, that's fine with me too, because we've gotten incredibly far. So I thank you all once again, and it means a lot to me from the bottom of my heart. And so we're going to move on to one more question.
Okay, and the last question of the night goes to Neil McHugh. He says, what do you think the state of the supply lines are to eastern Ukraine? It's no secret all the weapons are coming from the west, and the river seems like a really prominent choke point.
Which river was he talking about again?
Let's see. I'll just reread the question one more time. He said, what do you think the state of the supply lines are to eastern Ukraine? It's no secret all the weapons are coming from the west, and the river seems like a really prominent choke point. He doesn't really name the river here.
He must be talking about the Dnieper River, because it divides the country in two. I don't really think it's that big of a choke point, because we haven't seen any of the bridges inside of any of these cities get destroyed. And so I think that the logistics vehicles that are crossing from the west into the east across these bridges, or maybe the trains that are being used as well, aren't really being cut off from getting over there, because we haven't seen anything to suggest that. So I hope that answers the question a pretty good deal. It looks like... oh, wait a minute, hang on. We just got a $1,000 donation from Daria. Good lord. Oh my gosh, we're not even very close to 12K anymore. Just scratch that. We're over 12K. How far are we now?
We're very close to 13,000. We're like $30 away from it. That is an insane donation right there.
Dang, good lord. And they're still rolling in. I mean, honestly, like, the stream will be coming to, I gotta thank you very much. I mean, like, hell, I can't even talk right now. Thank you very much, Naria. That's $1,500 you've donated tonight, and that's loads. I don't even know how many people that will really help out, but it's gotta be dozens at least. So I thank you so much for that. That's unbelievable. That's really crazy, honestly. And so I thank you very much. I'm glad that a lot of people support Ukraine in that way, and especially you, because I think you've been here multiple times donating like this, and so I'm very glad that there's someone out there as nice as you that's willing to help out Ukraine so much. And I wish I could as well, but once again, you know, I'm pretty poor, so I'm trying the best I can just to do 100 a week. But I thank you once again, and so I think we'll go on for about 4 more minutes, because I would like to see if we could get up to 14,000. So, we got any questions, Matthew?
Okay, so not really any big questions I can see. Let's see. Here's actually one right here from Robert Massey III. He says, Enforcer, the Russian fixed-wing aircraft seem to be out of the news. Do you think the Ukrainians still have active medium to high altitude SAMs are still active?
Yes, we do know that they have a decent amount of anti-air active all across the country, and I believe that's why we don't see a lot of news about Russian aircraft being used, and they're being used to a very small degree, because their initial strikes on the first day didn't take out the anti-air installations they were aiming for. So to answer that question, yes, I believe that that is the case. But I thank you very much for the question, and we're going to move on to the next one.
Okay, and this has been a repeated question from a couple different viewers. They say, Enforcer, what are your thoughts with China buying up in the Pacific island next to Australia? Is Australia China's end goal? First Taiwan.
No, I don't think so. I mean, Australia is a wealthy country, as far as a country with their population goes. But I don't really think that they would just try and annex Australia. It's kind of a weird idea to me, so I don't really think so. It seems like it'd be pretty hard to accomplish, and also not really something I believe they would just want to do. I don't really think it's in their strategic interests, honestly. And also, they are very aligned with the West. They really are just a Western country down here in the middle of the Pacific Ocean in a way. So thank you for the question, but I don't think that's something that China will want to do. And so it looks like we've got enough time to get around to one more question. How close are we to 14,000 again, Matthew?
So we're currently sitting at $13,131. So we're just about 900 or so short of 14,000.
Ah, man, I don't think we'll be able to reach that in 2 minutes' time, but maybe the chat can prove me wrong. But that being said, we're going to move on to the last question of the night.
Okay, and let's see here. I'm trying to look for a good one. Let's see. Here's a question from John S. He says, Enforcer, would Russia abduct civilians from Ukraine and put them into gulags to create a free fire zone to allow WMD use?
I think that would be kind of a tough thing for them to do, considering that their logistics are already so strained. I think it would take a huge effort, an effort that they can't accomplish, to try and evacuate enough Ukrainian civilians so that way they could kind of clear a way for them to use weapons of mass destruction. I don't really think that that would be their end goal or their end game right now. So I hope I answered that question pretty well. And so that being said, we've reached the end of tonight's stream. Thank you all very much for showing up and donating. We got a load of support, and I'm very appreciative for all of it. We were going to help out UNICEF with $13,100 something. Usually that goes up after the stream just a little bit, but I thank you all once again, especially Naria, for donating as much as they did, and also the other high donors. If we could get a read off for the top 10, Matthew, could we do that real quick?
Yes. Let's see here. So, of course, you already mentioned Naria. We had that $500 donation from Brian Comiskey, as well as multiple donations from Zeta Lane, and also, let's see here, James Reyes, John Lischak, Brian Watikas, I think I'm mispronouncing that, but I can't remember the pronunciation, Austere Panic, among others as well.
Well, I thank them all so much for their donation. I gotta say, it's always impressive to see the amount of support that we can get for the fundraisers. It's kind of unfortunate that this one wasn't as successful as the last ones, but I don't care. I mean, it doesn't really matter. We still raised $13,000. And who in the world can all say that as a community we came together and now we've done something like $74,000 and support and fundraisers to Ukraine. I don't really think any community out there can say that right now, except for Mr. Beast with Team C's, but that's not a Ukraine thing. But I thank you all so much for showing up and doing this fundraiser with me. It means a lot to me, and I know it's going to mean a lot to the Ukrainians to get this help. The stream won't be running tomorrow. I know that y'all can't believe that. I've never said that. I always say it's coming on at 10 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow, but tomorrow that will not be the case. The stream will be off. I may... well, actually, nothing's going to run tomorrow at all. I was about to say there may be something, but I got nothing. So I thank you all so much for showing up tonight. Hope you all have a great night. Take care, and I'll see you all on Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern time to report the news in Ukraine and around the world for the past 48 hours. Thank you all very much once again, and I hope you all have a great night.